Well, firstly, I'd like to thank the New South Wales Dowsers Society for the invitation. It's not the first time I've spoken to this society. In the past, I've spoken about groundwater mapping and groundwater exploration, which I'm still doing. But today I want to talk about the story of water. We are mainly water, and we depend on water for so many things in our lives. And I think one thing we've forgotten about is just what water is. So today, in this presentation, I'm going to go through really the basics of what water is, what it means to us, particularly at a cellular level, and why it's important to our well-being. So firstly, just to introduce myself, I've been involved in my own business since the early 90s, but mainly in biological sciences, but more recently in water energy and water structure. And I've just come back from a conference of the world leaders in water science, and that is water structure or water energy science in Lisbon, in Portugal, and also had a few days in Germany with a fellow scientist I'm doing some work with. So in this presentation, I'm going to introduce some of my inventions into how to take water back to its most natural state. So in a pristine river, it has a negative charge. But unfortunately, most people in this world, probably well over 90% of people, are drinking destructured or dead water. So this presentation is going to cover the work that I've done in the science of structured water, and that goes back 30 odd years of research, and more recently into some of my inventions and the results of that work. I grew up on the banks of the Mongalo River, and I live there now. I grew up on a farm. I was one of 5 boys, and we literally lived in this river, fishing, rafting, swimming, and that river is still pristine. My wife and I moved back there in 99, although we bought the property back in 82. But my go-to place is really around water. So when my wife and I go on holidays, we'll go to these pristine river systems in New Zealand or Tasmania. That's our go-to place. So why do dowsers need to know about cell water? Well, the quality of water that we drink determines our cell voltage. And yes, your cell does have a voltage. It's not a battery. It actually runs on a negative charge. But your auric field, or your aura that extends from your body, is the quality of that is highly dependent on the quality of water that you drink. So I'm going to go into that in some detail in this presentation. So we determine through our auric field, or our awareness, what information comes in and what information goes out of our body. So to a dowser, that would be asking a question and getting a response. Now, I know in groundwater dowsing, and I've been tested against many other hydrological systems, and the dowsing always comes out on top, percentage-wise, in terms of accuracy. So including determining depth and volume and quality of water. So your cell hydration or cell dehydration degrades cell function, which is your voltage or capacitance, and therefore your environmental awareness and consciousness. I mean, ultimately, your long-term cell voltage or negative charge determines your longevity as a practicing dowser. So our body is mainly water. 99.9% of the molecules in our body are water molecules. And we're over 70% water. Dehydration of the body is implicated in up to 60 diseases, including high blood pressure. Your brain requires water, particularly those molecules of oxygen and hydrogen. So you need water for your saliva and the mucus lining from your mouth down through your esophagus to your stomach, small and large intestine. It's drinking water prior to eating that prepares that mucus lining for you. Water regulates your body temperature, promotes cell tissue growth, and protects your DNA. It's structured water actually that wraps around your DNA to prevent any genetic expression. So water acts as a shock absorber to your brain and spinal cord. It flushes waste out of your body, as you know, in urine and through your bowel or through perspiration. So water is involved with the microbes in converting food during digestion into nutrients, and you need water for lubricating muscles and joints. There's a famous scientist, we call him Dr. Batman, but he said, hydrate or die. We're not sick, we're dehydrated. Now, we have to be the voice for water, because no one else is protecting the water. And I'd have to say, after that welcome to country here, Australian Aboriginals would have some of the worst water quality of any Indigenous culture. And we do need to give a voice to their water quality. But let me start on the history of water. So water was formed in this earth around about 4 to 4.5 billion years ago. That is a process of radioactive transmutation and occurred in around about the intersection between the crust and the mantle. Now, there's work done mainly by Australian scientists, Professor Carey and Professor Endersby and others, who say that the amount of fresh water on this planet tied up in the crust is at least 3 times greater than the amount of water in the ocean. Now, it's hard to believe, but you know, I've been involved in groundwater exploration for a long time, and I know the deeper we go, the fresher the water becomes and the higher the volume. In a bore recently out near Hay in Western New South Wales, we got something like 20 million litres of water per day in a bore. That was a sustainable yield. So I think we're going to hear a lot about the availability of fresh water in the future. But the one thing I can say is there's plenty of fresh water. And it could be that we have to actually just start accessing the deep groundwater system to get fresh water. So this water emerged from the earth about 2,000 million years ago or 2 billion years ago. And then we ended up with an ocean. Then we had life in the ocean, which moved then to the land about 40 million years ago, 400 million years ago. And 2 million years ago, human species or homins emerged. Now, since that time, we've had about 100 billion homins or human-type species on this planet. And what have we got today? We've got about 8 to 9 billion people on this planet. So you can think about the extent of your ancestral line. It goes back a long way. So this Earth-generated water, and this, I've just taken an image here from the Primary Water Group in America, which explains the process by which water is formed within the Earth and then moves up through the fracturing. The Earth is actually expanding, so we're creating these fractures all the time. And that's why we have waterfalls on the tops of mountains. In fact, where I live, there's a fresh stream coming out of the top of Mount Buttawang, which forms Currawong Creek, and a place where I spent a lot of time as a kid. And it all comes up under pressure. So that's why we have geysers and springs, and you can find water in rocks coming out of volcanoes. Unfortunately, we have a situation now, and this is an image taken from the Murray-Darling some years ago. You know, we had this terrible situation of fish dying in that river system. And this is a continuing problem, and it's actually getting worse. And this all started when we started disposing of waste into the river system. And it still happens today. There's still sewage washing up on beaches, even around Sydney. I mean, my wife and I are fortunate to live, you know, on a property where I've got access to beautiful groundwater and river water, although we don't use the river water because we've got plenty of groundwater and rainwater. But this water, drinking water that people are now drinking, is actually now toxic. Most cities are drinking toxic water. It's full of chemicals, but unfortunately, it doesn't contain the same charge as water in its most natural state. So the pristine river systems, the water has a negative charge, and I've learned how to measure this, but also the cells in your body operate with this negative charge. We're designed to take in electrons or negative charge to our body. But the water that's coming out of most of people's tap is a positive charge. So the level of degradation of the water energy is increasing, and governments at this moment have no idea or clues or solutions of how to solve it. So someone has to be a voice for water and particularly talk about water integrity.